Hey, this is Kevin Marley, your Niagara Neighborhood Real Estate Agent, and there is a lot going on in the real estate market right now. There's a lot of people buying homes, there's a lot of people trying to sell homes, and a lot is changing as we move out of the tail end of this pandemic. So I wanted to take some time and sit down and kind of give an overview, a snapshot, if you will, of what's happening right now in the real estate market. So this is the number one question I get asked, right? It's always, hey, what's going on with the real estate market? Is it still hot? Is it dropping? I just read an article. It's dropped by 30%. What's going on, Kevin? And first of all, I want to say thank you. Welcome back if you are a longtime follower, viewer of mine. This is why I'm doing this. I get asked questions by you guys, and I want to be able to get information out there much better than text or email blasts. So I figured a video is the best way to do it. And also, welcome aboard if you're a new viewer coming to us for the first time. Just a little quick about me. I moved to Niagara recently, although I've always had family in the area, so I'm very familiar with the area. But I did recently make the move to Niagara myself with my family, with my wife. And so I am intimately familiar with the process of moving from a city, I was in Hamilton before, to a new location. And so I understand all the details and all the work that goes in on your end to physically move yourself to a new location and start integrating into the community. And on the flip side, I also know the back end of it, doing the deals and doing the transactions and that process. And so I feel I'm uniquely qualified to talk about the experience of moving into the Niagara region and all the wonderful and chaotic things that can go along with that process. And so, that's just a quick bit about me. And now let's get into the nitty gritty. Okay, let's talk about the market. As we move towards the tail end of this pandemic, in fact, we're easing restrictions completely in a couple of weeks now. We have seen some massive changes. We've got interest rate hikes, we've got price fluctuations, and more importantly, we have the buyer pool not willing to put up with the stuff that they were put through during the height of the pandemic. And on top of all of that, we had material costs go through the roofs for anyone trying to do a renovation. And if you were like most people, you were looking at maybe making some improvements to your home during this time where you were spending a lot of time at home and recognizing some of the places you would like to either have some more space, maybe a new deck, maybe a new bathroom, whatever it was, you realize how expensive the materials were and the timeline for a contractor to come out and actually complete the project. And so combine that with the massive price increase. You had buyers who were looking to make some minor changes to a new home, but then they were priced completely out of that area because all the homes increased massively by 30% sometimes year over year. And so you had this huge backlog of contractors not being able to get their work done because of the pandemic. You had buyers looking to buy homes and make changes, and that really bottlenecked the market. And we're now starting to see that ease up a little bit. We still have some contractor delays, but they're now working double time and really trying to get to everyone's renovations as fast as possible. And we've also got builders trying to get their projects back online because I don't know if you know, they were shut down for a little bit near the beginning and during some of the big peaks of the pandemic. And so with that, we are now starting to finally get people, they're able to get their contractors into their home, and the price of lumber has come down a little bit, and new homes are being built more speedily. And so with that, we do have some drop in the overall price of the market in some specific areas. And as you saw on some reports in the news, some areas have seen price decreases by 30%, but that is not the market overall. And I think that's an important point. Now, buyers were fed up with the process. Now, what exactly were they fed up with? The bidding process. Now, I know this has been in the news a lot recently. It was talked about even on the campaign trail a little bit from the provincial election. And heck, federal politicians are also taking stances and talking about this issue. But essentially, for those that don't know, during the height of the pandemic, when you were looking to buy a home, you would find a notice saying we will be looking at offers at a specific date. And that was between 4 days and 2 weeks out, depending on the area and the amount of buyers they were expecting. And what would happen was on that day, you would send them your offer, usually by email, because it was a pandemic. We were trying not to meet up in big groups. And then the seller would have tens, maybe up to 20 different offers on their plate. And they would either pick one or they would start negotiating with one. And of course, you were tied up with that until you found out you lost. And odds are you were going to lose unless you way overpaid. And that is why we saw some of these massive overpayments from a listing price. And in fact, it became the norm in many of my areas for the listing agent to list the price of the home a little bit lower in order to generate a larger number of offers, because when you see that large number of offers, if you really want this house, you will overpay by a substantial amount. And it became the norm for me anyway to know going in that if it was listed at a specific price in the 6 or 7s, you're looking at around $100,000 more. And that was just because that is what the area was looking for. It could go more if they got enough offers. Anyway, buyers were fed up with this and they are now walking away. If they see a bunch of offers coming onto a property, they don't even want to go near it. And it's this new dynamic from the buyers themselves that has really changed the process in a massive way. And sellers are still playing catch up. So now when you go to see a home, sellers are saying, we don't want to risk having all these buyers walk away from our home. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at any offer that comes to us on a first come, first serve basis. Now, this is more in keeping with real estate prior to the pandemic. You did still have some areas that have offer presentations prior to the pandemic. It was not a brand new practice by any means, but it wasn't the norm everywhere. And during the pandemic, it became the norm everywhere. So now we're kind of going back, at least in some areas, to a more traditional in the last 10 years way of doing real estate in terms of it's a first come, first serve basis. And so that is why you need to be working with a realtor who knows the area, knows the prices when you're going in to see a home already, and is able to tell you right off the bat, is this home looking to wait for a couple days or a week to take offers and try to do the pandemic style multiple offer situation, or is this a first come first serve basis and we need to put our offer in writing immediately if we want a chance to look at this home? I have been going out on showings and have been called by the listing agent to cancel because they just received an offer and they're taking it. They're not waiting. Even though they knew I was on my way, they didn't want to miss out on what was already on the table. And that is the brand new process that buyers who have been through the pandemic and have still not found a house, they're now realizing that there's a new process in town and they need to learn quick. Another issue buyers are upset about, and this is one that's near and dear to my heart. In fact, I feel way more strongly about this than the bidding process, although there are some issues with the bidding process. But this is the clauses and conditions in the contract itself. So if you haven't bought a house in a while, or if you just haven't been in the buying process at all yet and you're just dipping your toes in, when you do go to buy a home, you do have to put it in writing, and there is a standard agreement form that is filled out, and it's 6 pages, could be longer, but it's a minimum 6 pages. And at the tail end of it is where buyers and sellers get to stipulate some of the particulars of the agreement that are not already done in the preset writing of the form. These can be things from the financing condition that your bank asks you for. The bank would like 5 or longer days to analyze the property and make sure that this is a property they are comfortable putting a mortgage in with you for. And so they need some time to put all the numbers together and make sure that this works for them as well. During the pandemic, sellers would not let this slide. They would not allow buyers to have that window of a negotiation with their lender to make sure that they could, in fact, afford the home and had a mortgage for the home. And because of this, buyers took on all the risk So they would have to go and buy a property, having already spoken to their bank, and just hope that the bank agrees that the price is okay. And if the price was not okay, then there would be some issues and the buyers would have to figure it out on their own or walk away from the deal and risk losing out on their deposit. On top of that, we haven't been able to put inspections in very many places for a long time now, and this was before the pandemic even. You've also got other conditions in there that are a bit less intrusive if you're buying a condo, looking at the condo documents and stuff like this, but all of that was not allowed essentially by the sellers. They would just simply not look at your offer if it included this type of condition or clause. And because of that, buyers were having so much risk, and some of them were ending up with some serious legal issues. The buyers are sick of it. They don't want to take that risk anymore. And so a lot more are insisting on, and as much I love insisting on this as well, if we can do it in the market that we're in, and that is putting in these financing and inspection conditions, because they are really important to know if this home is actually worth it to the banks and they're actually going to help fund this purchase for you. And are you getting a home that is not going to have any massive financial issues for you after you buy it? Because the worst part is when you buy a new home and you get in there and all of a sudden everything needs to be renovated, but you've already put so much money in the purchase of the home, you don't have the funds left over to make those necessary upgrades. So because of that, buyers have had enough. They are putting these conditions in, and they are forcing sellers to start taking on some of that risk again. It's not everywhere, and it's a slow process. We are still seeing a number of offers with no conditions, and that's just unfortunately the way it is. And those offers tend to do better with sellers because they know even if the price is slightly lower, the risk is on the buyer. And so if anything goes wrong, the buyer has to deal with it, and the seller is essentially free and clear. And so this is why we've seen not only a drop in the price of homes, but also the number of days on market, because these conditions, when you accept an offer with a condition, you're still sitting on the market essentially. You're not fully sold, you're conditionally sold. And so you could have that offer fall through, and now you've, as the seller, and this is where the risk on the seller comes in, you've wasted some time while the buyer tried to get financing or had an inspection come through that they weren't happy with. You're now sitting on the market and wasting valuable opportunity showing that property or having other buyers come in and put offers in. So buyers really want sellers to take on some more risk. Sellers are still trying to port that risk over onto the buyers. And so there is a bit of a clash there when it comes to the process in which homes are being sold and how buyers and sellers want that process to go. And obviously the financial issue. Buyers are really fed up with the price of homes going up 30% year over year in the pandemic. And it's gotten to a point where buyers have had enough. In some areas, buyers just don't feel there's enough value there. That is why you do see some reports of house prices dropping 30%. Those are very specific neighborhoods. And it's because those homes, buyers feel they can get a better home, a bigger home, a better bang for their buck, if you will, in another city, even if it's 40 minutes down the highway, if they're working from home anyway. And now that the contractors are a little bit more freed up and they can actually get materials, buyers are saying, hey, I can literally make the home of my dreams if I just go down the road a little bit. And so that is why we are seeing the financial shakeup of the housing market, although it's area specific. And so that is also why it's important to work with someone familiar with the area, because when you get there and you say, here's my budget, I want this mega mansion, you might be thinking of the area in wrong terms. I get a lot of people who come out to St. Catharines and they think that home prices are half that what they are in Hamilton, and it depends on the neighborhood in St. Catharines. If you're in the North End, you're looking at pretty comparable prices. And so you might be surprised when you go to another city and try to get into the highest price point of that city, that it's not really within your budget if you also are planning some of those upgrades to your home after the purchase. So with all that being said, make sure you're working with someone who is familiar with the area, because they are going to be able to tell you right off the bat what you're looking for realistically in terms of your buying power in that specific market. Okay, that was a little bit of a tangent, but I wanted to kind of give a brief overview, a snapshot of the market as it is right now in really Ontario as a whole, but more specifically in the Niagara region, because this is where people are choosing to move after considering Toronto, then Hamilton. Their next stop along the way is here in the Niagara region, St. Catharines, or Niagara Falls itself. So with that out of the way, here are the 5 principles for success in this market. Number 1, manage your expectations. Now, this is one that is always true, and that is knowing what is actually within your budget. I get a lot of people who don't even know what their budget really is. They've heard some numbers from some people in the banking world, either through their own bank or through a mortgage broker or a friend who's in the business. And they haven't really run the numbers. They've just sort of given them a rough estimate, and they've given them a massive window. Well, that is not your budget. Your budget is not a window. And so what happens is people will say, my budget is $700, when really their budget is probably around $680. And what happens is you start looking at homes priced at $700, and right now, sometimes that is the price. But a lot of sellers are still not caught up to the new marketing strategies, and that is not the price that they have in mind. And so you got a big clash of ideas. You've got buyers on the one hand thinking that this is their budget and this is the value of this area, and you got sellers on the other hand thinking they're still at the height of the pandemic and they can get over $100,000 that they were asking for on their listing. And so because of that, it's really important that you understand what is possible within your budget, and you need to make all of this extremely clear to the professionals you're working with. Because if you are expecting to do renovations after the fact, you are going to need to make sure you have some funds set aside within your bank account to make that happen. Or there are other options as well that you can talk about with your lenders, but sometimes they do offer renovation cash back in the mortgage itself. And so there's a whole bunch of opportunity there. But the point is, you have to make sure everyone understands and is on the same page with what you intend to do. And on the flip side, making sure that you are aware of what the style of home is within that budget in that area. Because the thing is, you can look at an area and look at average house price, but that doesn't tell the full story. That area, that neighborhood might have a series of townhomes or row homes in one point of the street, and then a few doors down, you might have a double plot of land that has been merged together and someone's built a massive house on it. And you can have a huge difference in price there. And so simply knowing the average price of an area is not going to tell you the full story. And you might be looking in an area for a home that simply doesn't exist. Especially if you're looking at an average price of an area that has those kind of swings, that home just simply won't exist in that area. You're either going to have much lower priced townhomes or smaller, under 1,000 square foot bungalows, or you're going to have a giant mansion that is going to be going for well over $1 million in that area. And so the average price is going to be somewhere in the middle, maybe $800,000, but there's no homes in that area that exist at that price. And so that is why you need to make sure that you're honest with your real estate agent and your mortgage broker, and honest with yourself about what it is you're actually looking for, because it's not just about price. You're also looking for very specific things in your home: number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms. Maybe you need a certain number of car space on your driveway or in your garage. So these things are crucial to knowing what is it that you can afford. If you need those driveway spaces, that is going to cost more than a home that only has room for one car, but is much bigger. And so these are things that you need to keep in mind when you're looking for a home. And this all goes in terms of understanding what it is you're looking for and knowing what you are able to afford with your budget. Okay, number 2, that is speed. Right now, you need to get out to see that property in person right away. Now, You can buy a home just looking at it through online, especially if they had the virtual tours like we talked about during the pandemic. There's a lot of photos up there. You can get an agent to do a virtual tour with you over FaceTime or through some sort of video application on your phone. A whole bunch of options are available. But let's face it, you need to see the home. I know you, because I work with people all the time who think they're going to buy a home just by scanning the photos, and they never do. They need to see it in person. People just need to be in the presence of the home. Even though they might not know exactly what they're looking for, they just need to be there to make sure that everything does look the way it is in the photos. I have also heard people complain that the photos make it look bigger and nicer. That is the job of the photographers, to really attract your attention, and they're doing a great job. But people need to be in the home to buy a home. That's just what I have found. And so if you are trying to shop for a home and you're just sort of skimming realtor.ca online, you're not actually shopping for a home. And the way you get to a property the quickest is by working with a realtor in that area, because you're going to be able to say, hey, a home just went on the market, or heck, they'll call you and say, hey, this home just went on the market. I think it fits exactly what you're looking for in your budget. Let's go see it. And you need to go out to it right away, because like we talked about, the process has changed. And so when you used to be able to say, well, this home is going to be available for a couple weeks while they try and get in as much buyers as possible to really increase the number of potential offers when it comes to that offer date, that's not always happening anymore. So now you need to make sure you get out to that home, because it might be first come, first serve. And if you don't get out there for a couple days, you might be on your way to a showing, as I was just the other day. I get a call from the listing agent saying, hey, this home is sold. Sorry, we had a really great offer come in, and we just had to take it. And then I have to call my buyer while I'm driving in the car, hands-free of course, and say, hey, unfortunately the property was sold. They're disappointed. They don't really understand why I wasn't on top of this, but they wouldn't come out to the showing quicker. You need to get out as soon as it hits the market. Otherwise, you might miss out. And sometimes that's what it takes for these people to figure out, okay, there is some speed now in the market, especially if you've been in the market as a buyer the entire pandemic and you've just not been able to find a property because you were one of the other 19 offers that weren't getting accepted time and time again. Well, you think there's a lot of time you have between showings. No, you need to get out there right now, because it could be sold the next day, right out from under you. Now, on top of seeing it in person, because that's how people make decisions, is seeing the property in person, there's also something about being in the neighborhood and making sure that community feels right to you. And I know this is going to sound weird to people who don't quite understand what I mean, but you'll see when you come out to the Niagara region that there are little pockets that feel very different from each other. You can have one pocket that kind of feels almost cottagey, then you'll get another one that feels like the modern suburb. Other times it'll feel like you are in a small little town. There's a whole bunch of different communities here in Niagara, and even in St. Catharines, the city itself, which was essentially built up amongst a bunch of little towns and communities to combine into one city. You're going to have a bunch of different styles of homes, a bunch of different types of land sizes. So really getting out here and seeing what that's like, just walking around, driving around in the area, that's also really going to help you make a decision when you do finally see a home in that area, because you're going to know already that this does feel right, at least the feeling of the community and the surroundings of your home. And as long as the home works, it's going to work out for you in the long run. I've had a lot of people who buy a home because the home itself looks good, and later on aren't as big of a fan of the area they're in because they didn't want to take the time to really get a sense of what that area and that neighborhood feels like to live in. And you do that simply by being in its presence. Okay, number 3, I know I'm going to get pushback for this, but it's got to come out, and that is you need to be flexible with your criteria. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, Kevin, it's your job as the realtor to find me a home that fits exactly what I want. Well, the problem is it might not exist, especially if your budget is not endless. So if you are very strict on the style of home, the age of home, the specific number of bedrooms and bathrooms, needing a fully finished basement that also has an in-law suite, that has you have an ensuite to your master, all these things, it'd be great to have, but the thing is, the home just simply might not exist yet. You might have to build it. And unless you have the funds to build it, we're looking at some other options. And of course, you're going to have some things that are must-haves. If you are a growing family, you are going to need a certain number of bedrooms. And I get that. But if you're not a growing family and you simply want those bedrooms as just extra storage space, well, you don't need those bedrooms now, do you? You can have a larger storage room in the basement to take some of that stuff that would be going into those bedrooms, and you can just have a much bigger living space in your main living kitchen area and just have your bedroom and bathroom set aside on the house. And these are things that people don't quite consider. They get this very specific box in their mind of exactly what needs to be in their home. And this really hampers their ability to buy great homes on the market. So you do need to be flexible. And look, I am speaking from experience. When I moved to St. Catharines, we were not looking at a bungalow at all. We didn't like the idea of bungalow. We wanted to be up on the second floor in the bedroom area and then come down to our main living and kitchen area. And that's just in our mind, that is what we envisioned our life would be like. Well, we have a bungalow and we love it. This is exactly the lifestyle we actually wanted. And it just took us to kind of think outside the box and say, hey, maybe this can work. Yes, the bedrooms are on the main level, but they are tucked away. And so you still have your living space separate from your bedroom space. And it makes it easier for our cats that are running around. They don't have to go up 2 flights of stairs. It's just the main floor and the basement. And so what I'm saying is you need to explore these options. And when you get into that home that is not exactly as you envisioned, just kind of think about how this could still work. You can still have all the space you want with putting some storage in the basement. You don't need an ensuite if the bathroom is basically touching your bedroom door. Now, like I said, you're going to have some must-haves, and that is why it is important to talk about those with your realtor. Because if those are must-haves, if you do need that third bedroom, if you do need extra garage or driveway space, then that's fine. You can have some of those must-haves, but then other things need to have some compromise. The age of the home might need to change. The style of the home, the amount of land on the home might need to change it up a little bit to fit in those very specific criteria that you're looking for. And so I know people don't ever want to hear it, but the thing is, the people who are a little bit more flexible are the ones that are finding homes and buying them. And they are completely happy with them, with those small changes in their criteria. It's something as simple as going slightly outside of the specific neighborhood that you're looking in. As long as the feel is still there, you don't need to be on these very specific streets looking for something that simply is not built on that area. Okay, number 4, make quick decisions. This is one that, again, is probably an all-the-time thing, but it's one that is especially prevalent right now because of the change in the buying process, like we've talked about. Buyers who were going through this journey throughout the entire pandemic, they got it in their heads that they have between 4 days and 2 weeks to make a decision on a property. And while you really didn't at the time, because sometimes those properties, like you needed to make a decision to either yes or no to then move on to the next property. Buyers were still kind of hung up on this waiting game. That's all changed, like we talked about. And now buyers need to realize you need to get out there immediately. It might be sold before you get there if you wait. And so when you get there, you need to be ready to make a decision. Is this the right house? Yes or no? Now, I will say, it is very common. You're going to do it if you're a brand new buyer. When you first start looking and you first start working with a realtor, you go to a home and it's pretty good, but it's not great. It's got most of the things you're looking for, but there's a few things that you're compromising on, and you're not ready to compromise because you're not flexible yet. And you kind of go back and forth, you're not making up your mind, and then the house is gone. And then we spend a month looking at homes that never measure up to that first home because you didn't make a decision on that first home. I know it's scary, but the thing is, whatever's available on the market, that's what your opportunity is. And so once you see everything on the market, there is no guarantee another one like that comes up shortly. You could be waiting a year for something in a very specific neighborhood to come up again. And so that is why buyers need to be making decisions very quickly. You basically need to know when you leave that showing, is this a house you are willing to buy? Yes or no? And if you don't know at that point in time, the answer seemingly is no, but you risk regretting not buying that home and then looking for that same home for the rest of your search. You're caught up on the home that got away. And so that is why make quick decisions. Number 4. And number 5, and this is one that I've been harping on for a long time, commit to representation. I simply don't understand the hesitation with buyers. I know there's probably some confusion out there, but buyers, you need to understand that in the vast majority of real estate transactions, you do not pay to have somebody represent you. The seller typically pays. And again, you can have this conversation with your realtor, but it is very important that you have someone who knows the process, who can tell you all this stuff I'm saying right now, because you're going to get into this process. You're going to be scrolling through the realtor.ca or some other website that has listings. You're going to find one you like. You're going to click on it, and you're going to finally get a hold of someone. You're going to then schedule a time to go out, maybe on the weekend. Maybe there's an open house. And by the time that rolls around, you've missed out on that property. And you're going to do this a couple times until finally you get to a property with a realtor. And you're going to say, hey, this is pretty great. This guy knows what he's talking about with his home. He knows the area. He or she is able to set up a search for me that is on the back end of realtor.ca so that you get notified the minute some new listings go on the market. And on top of that, you're not paying for it. And they are representing you. They are fighting for you. They are explaining to you what the contract means for you. And so, again, I don't understand the hesitation. And it's really helpful to have someone that you can be honest with and say, here's what I'm looking to do. And that realtor that's representing you can be honest right back and say, with that budget and these specific criterias, it's not likely going to happen, especially in this area. But if we look over here, or if you change this criteria up a little bit in this area, so they're going to be able to help you really maximize your time in terms of what you're looking for. Right now, I've got a lot of searches set up for people who have a very tight budget with some lofty goals in mind. And so we have some key areas hyper targeted so that we know if a home goes on the market in those areas, we are going that day because we need to get in as soon as possible, like I talked about, and we're already familiar with those areas. And so all that's left is that house going to work? And you can't get that kind of speed and that kind of expertise from simply browsing the listings online and then just showing up with random realtors all the time who do not know your situation. They don't know what you are looking for, and they don't know what your goals are. And so you need to be honest with your representative, either your realtor, your mortgage broker, or whoever else is helping you, your lawyer as well, and they're going to be honest right back with you and really help you through this process. It just makes no sense to be floundering around when you can have someone who's really going to be there in your corner and educate you and make sure that you're not wasting time. Okay, so that was the 5 principles for success in this real estate market. Just to quickly recap, we've got manage your expectations, get out to those properties very quickly, be flexible with your criteria, make quick decisions, and always have representation. Thank you guys so much for sticking it out through the end. If you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Please like and comment on this video. I love to hear from you guys. Please subscribe and follow along. I'm going to have a lot more of these coming out because we have a lot of changes coming throughout the summer. And so stick with me and we're going to get through it together.